Today's guest underwent multiple facial surgeries because he believed one thing: looks decide how the world treats you.
I'm getting this done again. Come hell or high water, I'm going to get this augmentation again.
But two chin implants failed, one became infected, the other was misplaced and pressing against the nerve.
I became emotionally dysregulated. I didn't know if I'd actually end up ever looking better.
Then after years of long procedures and recovery, he says everything changed.
One minute I'm just like this depressed guy with like no hope. The next minute I'm like doing interviews, my TikTok's like starting to blow. Suddenly I've gone from being invisible to like mattering. It's all looks, dude. Anyone who says otherwise is coping.
Introducing Lin00b. All right, what's up, guys? Today I'm going to be talking with Lin00b. He has undergone multiple facial surgeries, and it's going to be kind of like an interview, podcast, discussion kind of thing. Lin00b, can you introduce yourself?
Yo, man. So probably the easiest way to put it is, I've been into the whole looksmaxing scene for a while. I'm 35 now, so I'm old. I'm very mature. Really been into it since 2016, just lurking and doing as much research as I can. And yeah, essentially I just started experimenting with just minor things, minor procedures. And then obviously as things got more serious and I guess more normalized, that's when I really sort of went all in and ended up, getting the real serious procedures. But it's always been an interest of mine. And I remember even at 15 years old, I was doing, morphs of myself and just trying to see what different facial proportions would look like. So I guess you could always say I've always been sort of striving and really interested in changing my appearance. And I've always recognized that just subtle changes in certain parts of your face will make dramatic improvements to how you're perceived.
For sure. All right. Well, thanks for coming on. And let's get right into the questions, which you kind of touched on. Why did you actually get into looksmaxing?
Well, that's it. Yeah. So basically always had an interest in it ever since. I think I would say I developed pretty serious forms of body dysmorphia at a young age, which I would say kicked in around puberty. I think that's sort of when you notice things start to change for better or worse. And we obviously, was the latter. So yeah, I would say around that age is when things became really serious for me, and I became deeply invested in the whole topic. And why? I just downloaded Photoshop one day, just started experimenting, and I'm yeah, this is what I want to do. And then immediately that's when I started thinking about and researching surgeries. That's as early as 2000 and we're talking 2008. So
what was the community like back then?
I mean, look, if we're talking 2008, there's no community. If you're even considering cosmetic surgery at that age, at that time, you're either mentally unwell or you're, a girl, or if you're a guy, you're unhinged or you're gay or whatever. So non-existent community. And then I would say the first time I started doing research and coming across communities would be probably early 2016. I started noticing sites like Lookism, but I would kind of ignore them because I sort of knew that if I went in deep into that rabbit hole, I just knew that there'd be no coming back out. So I kind of coped my way around that for a while. I was nah, I don't really need to go deep on this. And then eventually there was a turning point where I'm nah, I've got to change something.
I see. Was there a specific point in time where you knew this is it?
So I wasn't a terrible looking, we'll just say young adult. If we're talking just 16 to 18, even 20, I wasn't actually bad. But then obviously, as we age, skin quality degrades. The biggest thing was probably hair loss and Norwood Reaper. And I just didn't have a skull or any shape that I could just possibly pull off a buzz cut. So I became massively concerned once I started losing hair. And I was all right, I can afford to lose my hair, but I have to change my face. So I would say, yeah, that's really the turning point. It was probably hair loss is what really sparked the most. And then I also noticed the correlation between as I was getting older and my looks were becoming we'll just say I was deteriorating. I drew the parallels between that and then how I was being treated in real life by everyday people, by girls, by people in jobs, by just strangers. I just knew my pattern recognition, I would say, is solid. And I was nah, this is 100% it correlates to my appearance.
That makes sense. What was the first couple of looksmaxing things you did?
My man, the first thing that I did that was major was I had a rhino, which was I would say over the top a bit. It was too aggressive. It was actually a mistake, but I had a nose job. I had a chin implant. Didn't actually go that well. I can go deep on why if you want to. We can just skip
Yeah, of
over it. But I mean, yeah,
course.
those look the like realistically. I think before doing anything, like especially with your nose, you really should assess your face and sort of consider like, well, do I get osteotomy? Do I get Bimax? Because that's going to change your nose. I put up a post about how my nose was already amazing. If I just had some extra augmentation, like here, the nasal on the glabella, it would have looked perfect. So I made a mistake in there. My nose was over resected. It caused like slight saddle nose deformity. So it's slightly dipped in there, which I've addressed with filler. And then as for the chin implant, I had like a silicone one just put in like under my chin. And it just got infected and it had to come out. And it was like the most brutal experience because I'm there like being gaslit the whole time by the surgeon being told like, no, it's that, you're fine, it's inflammation. Meanwhile, my face looks like a butternut pumpkin. And I'm like, this ain't normal, bruv. So that had to come out. And then obviously that was like traumatic in and of itself. So really
That's
good result though,
crazy.
cosmetically, I
So
must say.
when did it get infected? Was it like immediately after the surgery, or did it take a second?
It was so brutal, dude, because I had it done. It was in Sydney at the time. I had it done along with the rhino, like all in one sitting. I looked mog like considerably better. I can post pics of how I looked, like even though it was still over, just my overall improvement with the rhino and like chin projection, it was really good. I left Sydney to go back to my state, and no joke, dude, like the next 2 days, I just woke up one day and my face is like twice the size and immense pain. And I was literally just like, yeah, it's over. Like it's so done. Like I knew there was like a major problem. So I think the window from surgery and implant and infection, I feel like it's about that 4 weeks. And if you're good after that, your chances of getting like cooked go down significantly.
Dude, I'm so glad I'm talking to you because I was under the impression that infections are like once they're in, you're good for the most part, and like once you've healed up, go.
Yeah, but I think it definitely comes down to, I think one element is the material of it, like the material of the implant that they use. But I really think the main thing is the actual like surgical technique and just their overall like cleanliness and sterility technique. And I just think that some are just careless because they just don't care. It's just not a big deal to them. But I really do think I was talking to Giant Implants about this and what he thinks about post-implant infections. And he was saying he honestly thinks that it's more or less it happens in the operating room, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
Like
that's what
that's
I
pretty
thought.
much where your fate is sealed, which kind of makes sense.
I see. So then after you got infected and it got removed, what were you thinking then? What was the plan?
Obviously, like, yeah, if that ever happens to you, if that's ever happened to anyone would agree that it is pretty traumatic because not only do you like have this somewhat amazing results you ascend, but then you immediately descend after. And sometimes you can even look worse than what you did without the augmentation.
Yeah.
Sorry, you were asking how I felt after it.
And what was your thought process? Were you thinking, okay, I'm gonna put it back in? What was the plan?
Because it looked so good and I literally experienced like what it was like having it in there and how I felt about myself, just the whole dopamine rush of like just looking better, like, near instantly. I knew like then and there, I'm like, yeah, I'm getting this done again. Come hell or high water, I'm going to get this augmentation again. It's just a matter of like when and how and who does it and that sort of thing.
I see. And I completely agree. Yeah. People don't understand the feeling you get when you see such a crazy change. Even my lip stuff, it was not that big of a change, but I just felt so good. The dopamine was unreal.
It's better than any drug. You imagine like your crush texts you back. It's that times 10, but then it's like, I feel like it never truly wears off either.
That's what I was gonna say. That is exactly what I was gonna say. Is your baseline just goes permanently up.
100%. And then you wake up and you look at yourself in the mirror every day. And instead of like that subconscious, oh, I'm cooked, you'll get up and look in the mirror and just be like, oh, I'm og. Like
Yeah,
it doesn't go away.
yeah, dude, I relate to that so
You'll
heavily. Like,
feel healthier too.
you just look in the mirror and you smile, you know. So after the implant got infected and you decided that you're going to go after the surgery again, what was the game plan then? Were you thinking a different doctor, different material? What were your thoughts?
So me and my infinite like intelligence, years later, like I think 2019, I had some chin filler to again just experiment and just see what it would look like. I'd never had filler before. So I did have chin filler. Love the result. 3 months later, it was like soft. My chin was like, kind of like sagging a little bit. It was kind of like, I looked at it, I'm like, man, this looked amazing. But again, I had that taste of like what it did for me and what it did for my SMV. And it wasn't a joke because I immediately started to get like IOIs and like just more over interest from girls and stuff. But long story short, I had another surgery in 2019. And again, just the most low IQ move imaginable. I remember Googling chin implants, and I would have just picked one of the first surgeons that came up in my state that was doing it cheap because I thought silicone implant, chin, not much can go wrong. If I get infected, I get infected. But I didn't know that it was really a surgeon kind of influence thing. Went to a guy, probably not going to mention his name. And instead of putting it like in through like the submentally here, which is absolutely ideal for just a chin implant, which we can get into another time. He put it through inside the mouth where they actually sever this mentalis muscle. He puts the implant in, things go okay for a bit, no infection this time, but I'm experiencing like intense pain for just months and even like months and months after the surgery. And I'm like, this isn't right. And it also didn't look right. Instead of having like a little groove there, it was kind of just non-existent. It was just kind of like just straight up. There was no groove. It just didn't look right. And I'm complaining about the pain. He's like, you're fine, you're fine. And I'm like, nah, man. I go and get a scan and we look at it, and no joke, dude. And I'll probably give you this image. You can put it in the video if you want. So the implant was so misplaced that it was like literally, say the implant is supposed to go on like the inferior sort of ridge here on the chin. It was literally sitting like up around here, completely distorting how the chin should look. And it was even like pushing on like I think it's the mental nerve they call it. It was pushing up on that, which explained the pain. So not only was it severely misplaced, it wasn't fixated, it was pushing on nerves. It wasn't even a good cosmetic result. It had to come out. I refused to go back to the surgeon that put it in because I'm like, if he can't even do that correctly, he's not going to take it out correctly. I also experienced like lip descent. So another thing with implants, and this can happen with Genio if it's not done right, you have to do your research. But if they don't like reconnect this muscle here, this mentalis muscle, you'll actually get like a lower lip that actually descends and you'll end up with teeth show like this. And then you'll also end up with chin ptosis, which is where like this fat pad, instead of sitting like nice and high, it'll actually droop down and it looks horrific. It does not mog. It's extremely hard to fix. And I actually got a degree of that when I had the implant taken out. Even though I had a really experienced surgeon, he's like, this might happen. It's not going to be good. It's very hard to fix. And I ended up with like a very sort of, I'd say a moderate version of that. And it was like, dude, I was like just mentally just like devastated because it's like second attempt, more money, more investment, more time, and now an even more serious, potentially irreversible complication. I was like, God does not, I was praying again. I was like, God does not want me to mog at this point. I'm not meant to like touch my chin is like the thought process after that.
Dude, no one talks about this. I'm honestly surprised to hear what I'm hearing. And even though it sucked, I feel like now you know exactly like what could go wrong. It's extremely helpful.
No, I definitely think I can't understate enough like about how important it is to do your research with the surgeon, even for something simple. You're thinking like a silicone chin implant, like what could go wrong, which was literally my mindset. I'm like, it's not canthoplasty. It's like we're talking just put silicone here. They can do it under local, and I got fucked. So, and also too, man, I think that if I'm going to be real, I don't think Australia has a good level of like cosmetic plastic surgeons when it comes to like catering to men's procedures.
I feel like the whole men's procedures already is pretty niche, so I could definitely understand that other countries are less advanced.
So 100%. I mean, if you want to get like a boob job or a tummy tuck, and you're a girl, by all means, there's tons of surgeons that will like take your money here. But if you're a dude, if you're a guy and you want to get like like a black pill Bimax procedure or like God forbid custom implants, you're done. You're going to have to passport max.
That's it. You're done. I gotta start using that.
You're finished.
So why did you go with the implants instead of the Genio?
I think when I looked at my chin and my scans, and I just felt like doing a Genio. I know that there's like special modified versions of Genio, But I just really like the idea of just an implant, the way that it's completely custom and bespoke. And it's like, it's not just moving bone, it's adding augmentation while also adding like mass to your face, if that makes sense. We're
Hmm.
not just moving things around, we're actually like adding mass, we're adding volume, we're adding, yeah. So I
It's
also like the fact that
customized.
like it's customized as well. It also has like obviously lateral wings that like blend seamlessly into the mandible.
Yep.
And then obviously too, when I had the surgery, we kind of designed a plan to also help like fix my ptosis issue. My lower lip used to hang. Again, I can like get a photo or video of that, how bad it was. We put, again, thanks to Giant, we put like perforated holes in the implant. And in the way that it was like, I guess, implanted surgically was we had basically running through the perforated holes and really just anchoring everything together and getting that mentalis muscle high and tight as possible, which is where it should sit organically. So it was kind of just all part of the plan to like obviously one to make me mog, but then two, we wanted to fix like that chin ptosis, that lower lip descent issue.
I see. And after you got that second implant removed, did that mess with your like skin at all or the way things looked once it was fully gone?
Yeah, I'll get some videos and pictures, but it did not look good at all, dude. Again, in motion when I'm talking, you would see like increased lower lip exposure, which is not a good look. I mean, it's typically, you'll only see that in like the elderly or people with maybe like, you know, you'll see excessive amounts of that in people with, I guess, jaw issues, deficiencies, etc. But I'll get some actual photos and videos and you'll see for yourself that it's not, if anyone Googles like chin ptosis, you'll see it and you'll be like, yeah, that is not a mug trait.
I see. So then you get the implant removed. What's next? Where are you thinking? What's the new plan?
I'm thinking for probably about 18 months after that it's over. I'm just kind of like, yeah, just trying to like get through life and just, you know, like do the best that I can. One day I just kind of like figure that I'll at least start soft maxing and just kind of see where I end up after that. I just had like a glimmer of hope. I just kind of felt like, you know, I can't just sit here and like rot and just like let this happen. I'm like, no, I'm going to take like control of this situation and at least maximize like what potential is there. And again, just being treated the way that I was being treated, dude, I was like, I can't go through life with this and then it getting progressively worse. So yeah, dude, I would say like 18 months, maybe even 2 years of just rotting. And then I just started, I'm like, one day I'm like, nah, you know, I got to turn this around. I'm going to start just looksmaxing. I'm going to softmax. I'm going to do everything that I can without any other procedures, like surgical procedures. And I'm like, hell, let's just see where we end up. And you'll actually see that I had a pretty good result, which were the ones that I posted pre-implants, where I just did all of the facial hair, skincare, tanning, you know, like boosting health indicators, everything like that. And I actually got myself into a pretty good position. And again, I started to get IOIs again. I got in like relationships. I had no problem at all with like attraction, like from girls. And that's, I guess, what gave me like hope again, was just seeing like that increased interest and the treatment from others getting better and better with each adjustment that I made. So as long as you're smart about how you do it and it's calibrated and you know what you're doing, you can actually achieve a lot without surgery, even like at the worst of times.
Did you get your tattoos to look better for girls?
Yeah, man. Look, one day, I look at it this way. Do we do anything? We can cope all day, but it's like, do we really do anything without, you know, the whole mindset of like, we're doing it for the opposite sex? So one, I did it because it looks cool. It suits the aesthetic. But yeah, obviously like it's a massive, I'm really big on having like a unique look and having that like niche appeal. So yeah, I mean, I did it for myself to a degree, but obviously I wanted to have a unique look. I wanted to get tattoos that are unique. I wanted to stand out. And dude, I mean, if I'm being honest, like some people, like even Clav will say tattoos are gesture. And I mean, I just disagree, dude. Like just based on the feedback that I get, just based on how many girls compliment them, how many girls have said to me, I want to color your tattoos in. How many tattoos do you have? Did this one hurt while she like touches my arm? It's like, I just beg to differ that they're not like, I just beg to differ that they're jester.
I somewhat agree with Clad, but I also see your point. I personally prefer temporary tattoos. I actually had temporary tattoos. I'm about to do a tutorial on another set. One thing I don't personally like is the permanentness, but I feel like yours really suit your face and the look that you have. You have like this bad boy look going on with the stubble, and you mog, and it really suits you.
I think it's, yeah, I think and Dylan talks about this as well, but it's just kind of like about playing to your phenotype and playing to your strengths. And I already know
Exactly.
that I've got a pretty like striking look. Someone call me uncanny, which like fair enough. But it's like, I think I just kind of like appeal to that, striking, like sort of different, unique look. And I do so by again, like having that niche appeal. I think if I wanted to like walk around and talk and act and dress like someone like Club, I don't think it would be anywhere near as effective with this.
Yeah, that's fair enough. All right, and then getting back to the surgery stuff. So after you take the chin implant out, but you decide that you're going to soft max, then what came next?
So I Softmax, I've realized that things are going good. I realized that I'm now at a point where I probably don't need to do like much more to have a good quality of life. But at the same time, I also knew that without frauding like massively with facial hair, I didn't have the best lower third. I had like very like short ramus. My chin was like not
That's me.
good. And I remember like talking to, and I've mentioned this in another video, but obviously I come across like, certain black pilled surgeons on forums and things. And then I come across like this elite group, which I won't mention purely just because it's like completely, this is gonna sound like so cringe, but it's completely closed off. Like I don't think anyone's ever joining it. It's a very small circle of people. And these guys are like highly intelligent. They're like action takers. And then I come across obviously some of them going to like the best surgeons in the world. And then the fact that they also collaborate with Giant. And I'm like, at first I thought they were just like memeing. I'm like, this can't be real. Like this is a joke, right? Like I knew of Giant. I'm like, but he's not actually out here designing people's like faces, right? It's a meme page. Like this is not a thing. And then eventually I hung around, they're cool, they're knowledgeable. And then I start seeing their results and I'm like, I had this like, holy fuck moment and it changed everything for me. And suddenly I went from like thinking like, this is just like a joke to this is why I'm going to get out of bed tomorrow.
Wow. Well, the Pepe the Frog logo kind of throws people off.
That's why it's so base though. He's not even
Yes.
taking it seriously at all. And yet he's just doing the most like black pilled, like unhinged, things imaginable. I'd say in a good way. Like I was one of his earlier cases and I think, people can like, they can like shit on the result all they want, but I think he's only getting better with time. And it's not like he's not capable of conservative cases and like conservative movements and implants at all. He's like on a spectrum there.
So what did you actually get with them?
We just call it me and my friend call it like the peak face mask. So just everything. So yeah, like obviously, pretty aggressive jaw angles, pretty aggressive like chin, as in like we wanted a lot of interior projection because that was like part of I guess the strategy to help fix like my chin and my lip issue. Huge infras, which like people either love, like they're so polarizing, people love them or hate them.
Yeah,
Once I get some fat transferred to this area, like I think people are gonna love them. But
they're gonna switch up.
so yeah, I think they'll switch. I think they'll be like doing 180s, bro. Obviously, like zygomatic arch, like so obviously big infras, but then it runs along here as well, which helps like increase like like the overall bizygomatic width, which helps with, like IPT, for example. And then supras, so big supras, probably a bit too big, but again, can't make it perfect. You don't know how your soft tissue is going to look when they're implanted. And probably the big thing for me was it's not really noticeable here, but it is in certain downlighting, but you've got this like supramogular, like super orbital drop down, so I've just got a pretty much almost like straight, like super orbital ridge, which again, some people like, they hate it. Cool. But it looks pretty mogger. It looks very dom, especially in like aggressive lighting.
I agree, and I think it also suits you with like the stubble and then the strong jaw and the tattoos. Like a strong dominant feature, I think suits you well.
Yeah, I think I make it work, dude. At the end of the day, it's not going to be perfect. And, there's always going to be like critics and stuff like that. But again, if I'm just going off of like, the general consensus and feedback in real life that I get from people, others, opposite sex, respect from men, just everyday strangers, it's like it's unequivocally positive and unequivocally just like, people like me or they're friends or they're anything but indifferent.
For sure.
So I'm making an impact one way or the other.
And then as far as your design went, did you request anything specific? And also, did you have a certain face in mind when you were planning your design?
Yeah, so when I went to Giant, I forget what he called it. I think he called it like a It wasn't a wish list. It was like you might have called it a wish pick or something. But yeah, the whole, I'm not saying that I look like him. Someone said that I look like his older brother who does weed, which I thought was funny in one of my lives. But I use Vegan Hacker as like a bit of a model for like how I wanted stuff to look. I'm like, I really love the way he's got like, he's got like just really pronounced cheekbones.
Yeah.
Just his aesthetic in general. I kind of, I'll be honest, I kind of modeled a lot of it off that. I don't think we got too close to that. But again, I think we got to a point where I'm like happy enough with it. And then again, I've made it work. So
I think you're actually pretty close. I feel like you're like the masculine Vinny Hacker.
yeah, I'd say maybe like a more dom, like maybe slightly uncanny hacker. He's got like more sort of like lower set, less pronounced cheekbones. But again, dude, you can kind of make anything work if you're just half intelligent and you have the right kind of like look and the way you present yourself. And then obviously too, I do a bit of like Softmaxing and, like black pilled like cosmetic techniques that sort of like kind of like try to play to my strengths and like, mask like any weaknesses or flaws. So just use your brain theory.
For sure. Did you have any specific requests for your surgery?
Yeah. So I mean, probably the biggest thing for me was I wanted to address like the chin issue. And that's when we came up with like this bespoke, like perforated holes. And I would say at this point, like mainly from the side, it was just literally the tissue was like drooping down. I would say that's pretty much like fixed at this point. That was probably like my biggest priority. I started out just wanting a chin implant. And I remember my friend being like, dude, like don't be a pussy. Like just get everything, dude. He's like, you're going to go to the effort of flying overseas, like surgery. It's going to be huge investment regardless. Like just get everything, dude. Just mog. I'm like, all right, YOLO. As far as requirements, obviously that was one. Another one was I did want pronounced zygos. Again, I didn't think they'd look exactly like this, but I'm also lacking fat. So I say we judge that once I've like addressed the fat problem. The second thing was because they're big zygos, I didn't want them put in through my eyes, my eyelids, because I know that's an option. And I just thought to myself, my eye area is already far from perfect. I'm like, if I make them worse or like cause any like more like ptosis or stretching or asymmetries, whatever, it's definitely done. So I made sure they were put in like through the mouth. And I also asked for them to be segmented. Again, because they're big, these are like cut in two. It's not just one big piece. Like it's like one piece here. There's like a little line here. And then there's like another piece that like runs across here. So definitely having the infras segmented just because they're like huge. And the chin is also segmented. So I think if you're going to get big implants, you definitely want a surgeon who's open to like segmenting them. Because again, it's going to minimize the opening, the trauma, everything.
Yeah, I couldn't even tell that there is like a segment or anything. Can you tell in person? Is there a line somewhere?
I think it's probably hard to see here. Sorry, man. Holy grease, holy everything. Like if you were to run your finger across here, you would feel like a line. But again, dude, with just, if you've just got normal fat distribution in your face, which I'm the opposite of, I've not got enough fat. You won't even see the lines. So
that brings me to another question is, how do they feel under your skin?
I think I joked in the last video and I was like, or in a live and I was like, just feels like mog, bro. But in reality, it just feels like bone. Like it literally just feels like bone. I think I don't know if it's because of just how I am, like my own face, or if it's because of the way implants are inserted and what it does to surrounding fat. But there's like very, very little fat like around the implants at all. So it's pretty much like almost feels like skin and then straight to like what feels like bone. So you can definitely feel them. Like you can definitely feel how aggressive they are. And I think if you're going to have like big implants, you either want to be like have a fatty face or you're going to want to like soften the look with like fat grafting after the fact. So in my case, yeah, it's very noticeable. And I would say, if someone were to run their hand over my face, they would be like, that's different.
I see. Is there a reason you can get any?
I know these are like overly, sorry, I was just going to say, I know these are like overly detailed answers, bro. So if you want me to like keep it lighter or not go as deep, or you can just let me know.
I promise you, everyone is going to love these detailed answers. I can just tell that people are going to eat this shit up.
Oh, that's good, man.
So is there any reason you didn't do any osteotomies?
Well, like you. But in all honesty, obviously I considered it, but then I looked at it and, you you look at my before pictures and you're like, okay, this guy's clearly recessed, like he needs advancement. But I'm lucky to be like, to just have one of those insane, like an insane hyoid essentially, which you can somewhat get away with not being like super forward grown. I looked at it with Giant. We talked about it. we just decided together we could do it, but it just wasn't necessary. So one aspect was I didn't feel the juice was worth the squeeze. Another aspect was money. Another aspect was like risk. It's like more risks of things going wrong, like relapse, or what if the movements don't work. Another consideration was if we do, osteotomy at the same time as implants, there's just so many more like variables and things that could go wrong.
Yeah.
And I just thought, unless you really need Bimax, I just didn't, it wasn't warranted to me. Money, obviously, as well. And then also because I had that rhinoplasty, I knew I'd have to get another revision rhinoplasty. And again, that's another variable. That's more surgery, more money. So I thought, you know what? Like, I think I'm pretty confident I can make it work with just implants. So I'm like, fuck it. I'm just going to do implants. We could always do more, but it's like, what do they say with like Tefano? It's like, I didn't want to fly too close to the sun, so to speak.
Yeah, sure.
I think I like kind of tiptoed around it, but.
No, you answer that perfectly. And then is there anything else that you got surgery-wise?
No, people don't believe me. Like I've seen like, forum posts and just comments that are made. They think I've had all this stuff done. Like literally my like rhino, one poorly executed rhino, 2 botched chin implants, which actually like made me worse. Like they made my baseline worse than what it was. And then once those chin implants came out years later, so 2023, I'm like, fuck it. And then I just sent it and then just did full facial implants. So you could really argue like 2 successful surgeries and then 2 failed chin implants, and that's it. If you want to consider filler, I mean, yeah, I've had nose filler. I've had a little bit of lip filler. I had Botox in my masseters just prior to the jaw angles, and that was to try to prevent dehiscence. Didn't do shit. But that's literally it. No other surgeries.
Is there any complications that came with the surgery with Giant?
Obviously, one would be the dehiscence, which I just sort of touched on then. That's obviously where the muscle here like literally detaches from like its native spot. And I don't know exactly the mechanics of how it works, but now the muscle sits higher. Instead of being like this mogger sort of like striation across my thing, it's like more of a bunched up little ball. So I have that on both sides. And I think that's like directly correlated to the size of your implants as to how severe that ends up being. So dehiscence is one. I think you've really got to go into it considering that if you get jaw angles, you're probably going to end up with some degree of masseter dehiscence. And I think also the chances of that worsening or happening increases with each revision. And it needs to be like acknowledged. Obviously, the other thing as well is just a poor cosmetic outcome. Like I posted a photo of me with like super low body fat. And even now I'm pretty low body fat, believe it or not. I'm like low body fat, high bloat. And if we're being honest, like like my temples are very hollow. I've got like quite aggressive like hollowness under my eyes, and aggressive downlighting. If I'm like really underweight, I look like a corpse, So that's probably the main thing. But as far as just those 2 things, so we'll just say like less than desirable cosmetic outcome and the need for like probably like fat transfer, masseter dehiscence, and that's probably it, dude. Aside from that, like as we've touched on, probably the other like disadvantage of like ascending was STIs. So
I see. That's a good problem to have,
That's true. LTN problems.
As far as things that you wish you knew going into the surgery, is there anything you wish you knew before getting cosmetic facial surgery?
You can look at your skull all day on a scan and you can sit there and like goon to it and just imagine how much you're going to like mog. I think Giant touched on this as well. You just don't know how your soft tissue is actually going to like, appear after surgery, and people comment on my eyes and stuff. And it's because my eyes always had a specific look. And I've got huge infras, I've got huge supras, but I've still got the exact same eye area, same, canthus attachments, everything like that. So there's things that are just not going to change, and they're not going to necessarily like correspond with the bone structure beneath, and it can look a bit off sometimes. So that's probably another element. Another thing would be if you're getting big implants like I did, objectively they're big for my skull size. The need for a fat transfer. I'm probably going to need fat transfer to really get the desired look that I want. Or I can gain weight, but then I'm going to have like a good-ish face, but I'm going to have like some gut, which I don't want that. So that's probably another thing as well is like, will I need fat transfer Probably, and also recovery time. So like, they put these giants, in through the mouth, and people don't talk about this. They go, "Oh no, you're good. 3 months and you're good," and it's like you'll be okay. You'll look good. But I'm telling you, dude, there's like the most stubborn edema that like accumulated here, which is kind of resembles what I have now, but this is just more from test bloat. But this is before I was ever on test. I had the most stubborn, just fluid retention and just edema here, and I had these aggressive folds, and they just would not go away for literally, I'm gonna say a year before they finally like settled down. So you can get really stubborn swelling and just edema in places like this where it doesn't look good. At least in my case, and I've noticed it with other cases too. I think really you're not going to see the true finalized implant result for at least a year plus. That's my objective opinion.
That is a long time. And that's what I was going to ask is how long do you think the recovery time actually is when getting implants?
I'd say if you're like me and you return to work within the first month, girls won't even acknowledge you as like a human being, which is what happened to me.
Oh, no.
Sorry to sidetrack, bro, but I remember like
No, it's good.
I looked acceptable before I went overseas. And I was like, oh, just so you guys know, like I'm getting like I literally was like, I'm getting a minor procedure. Like, I'll be back soon. Rah. I come back, man, and I just look like just absolutely just buffed. Like I look like someone who's had a face transplant and then their face is injected with like just filler. Like it was not a good look. And I remember there was like girls that would actively show me IOIs before I went there. They'd always smile, they'd always say hey, they'd always like giggle. And I'm not even kidding, dude. I came back and those very same girls, I like they wouldn't even make eye contact with me. I was just gonna say, like, this kind of ties into your previous question though. Like that is like the mental side of it. The mental side of it being like for up to a year or especially the first like few months, you're gonna look like shit. Like you're not gonna look good. You're not gonna look like yourself before surgery. You're gonna look worse. It's kind of like people think ascending is kind of like this, but for me it was like it went right down and then it kind of was like on the way up. It was really quite a slow recovery, and mentally I just wasn't ready. Like I became emotionally dysregulated. I didn't know if I'd actually end up ever looking better. I had uncertainty around how the final result would look. So you've got to be like mentally robust and ready to like look like shit for potentially a long period of time. So it's not for the weak. And if you've got BDD, you've really got to be a body dysmorphia. You've really got to be mindful of that. You've got to go into it knowing that, yeah, you're going to descend for a bit.
I'm glad you mentioned one part I was going to ask you. Was there any point in your surgery where you were like, this isn't it? Were you having second doubts or second thoughts or doubts?
During the surgery or leading up to it or like just after the surgery or
Throughout any part?
I think I like joked when I was getting put under and they put the anesthesia in and they're like, all right, 99. I think I like joked and was like, don't botch me or something. I was like, please don't botch me. And they laughed. So that was probably the one time I had some concern. But if I'm being honest, dude, I was strangely low inhibition when it came to the whole thing. I just kind of was in such a good mindset that I just knew that I was going to end up with a good result. I think the doubts like came after the surgery when I had all the swelling, when it was just out of control, and I had just crazy low body fat. They put you on like aggressive antibiotics as well to mitigate infections. So that can have an impact on your overall well-being and mental health. So you stack all of these things combined. You don't look good. You don't feel good. Your gut microbiome's like disrupted, and it's enough to, I think, it did. I had some serious like gut and depression and just overall like anxiety spikes after the surgery. Like I definitely had like, you could say like feelings of regret and stuff like that. And I'm just like glad that I like pushed through it. And it made me like also look into, it's a reason I know so much as well about like, Softmaxing and like ways to promote healing and ways to like reduce edema and just ways to compensate for certain flaws. So in a way, it was silver lining as I also learned a lot about just Softmaxing and like compensating for certain flaws in general.
What do you think is some of the best advice that like you specifically know that most people don't know?
Man, I think like people massively underestimate the power of just stacking like small adjustments and small tweaks. They think that they can just like, chuck implants in their face and get Blimax and call it a day. They could just go clubbing and suddenly they're just going to pull. And it's like, man, if they knew what goes into like the way that I look to get this appearance. Just everything is calculated. There's always little adjustments that I make. I think black pillars tend to like massively discount. I think they massively like will discount and just underestimate the power of just cosmetics, things that don't involve surgery. Like I talk about face yoga and people laugh at me, and it's like literally you're toning the muscles in your face, which will give you like a better, like tighter look. Your elevator muscles are gonna like, actually lift your face. So just things like that. So just you could just call it like little soft maxes that most people would like call cope. And obviously then the power of just little soft maxes, just one after the other, after the other, after the other, whether it's like, curling like your lateral lashes to like change your perceived canthal tilt, or using a bit of lip liner to reduce your like filtering, just doing everything and as much as you can and stacking it. Eventually what happens is like, you're just going to start to look better collectively. I think the analogy I used on my TikTok was it's kind of like Formula One, like you can make one little adjustment to your car and it's like, cool, whatever. But you make like 10 or you make 100 and then suddenly it's like you win the race because you were like persistent and you just made so many adjustments and you did the right adjustments, more importantly.
That is a fantastic answer, and I couldn't agree more. I feel like a lot of people will see something like the smile line pencil that you were doing, or like the shadowing there, and they'll be like, dude, this makes no difference. But once you do like a bunch of tiny things, it definitely adds up.
Dude, if I were to just write a list of just all the things that I do and why that I do it, like I would just, they'd put me in a psych ward. They'd be like, dude, you don't need to do that. Like you're unhinged. But again, they can disagree all they want. I think a lot of black pillars, I think they cope when it comes to just very minor adjustments. They cope by saying like, it's not worth it. It makes no difference. It's like, well, if I can see that it makes a difference to me, and you trust your own judgment, that's good enough for me. And then again, you just kind of go by like the feedback that you get in real life.
And that's a good point. So what has your feedback been like in your life? How's your dating life changed, your relationships changed? What's happened?
So man, obviously I'm not going to sit here and say like, I'm like this ungodly Chad that all women are into. I've got a very like unique, very striking, very, I guess, kind of polarizing look. And look, some people fuck with it and they love it. That's why like TikTok is like growing so rapidly. And I'm sure like other people don't, like I've sometimes like, met a girl and I get a look where it's like, I can just tell she doesn't dig it and that's fine. And then I've also been on dates where the girl has just said like, are you real? Like you're impossibly attractive, and just been like laughing and just constant just comments and like, I'm sorry, but you're like way too good looking to be like hanging out with me and like blah. So it's like, you might not float everyone's boat, but then to others, you'll be like impossibly hot, or just like, they're just so insecure that like, they almost just like check out because they just feel like you're so far out of their league. And I know this for a fact. I've had girls just be honest with me. And this is the feedback that I'm getting. And it makes sense. I have no issue with, I get a lot of matches on dating apps. There's like videos. If anything, dude, I've got to probably be more of an asshole. I think girls expect me to be. I think that's another thing as well people don't talk about. When you ascend, I think it sounds weird, but I think you're almost looked at, there must be something wrong with you if your degree of confidence and cockiness doesn't match your appearance. If you're too nice,
Yeah.
and then you look like me, girls just expect me to be an asshole. If I had $1 for every time a girl was like, oh my God, I just can't believe like I really thought you'd be so mean. I really thought you'd be an asshole. I get that like all the time. That's another thing when you ascend. If your personality doesn't match your exterior, your final result, like how you look, it's almost going to throw people off. They're going to be like, this doesn't match. This doesn't correspond.
And I honestly think that's like a super good thing, whether it's you have that like bad boy appeal and you're actually like a nice, goofy, fun guy, or the opposite, if you're like a super nice guy and you're just like, I don't know, like a drug addict or something. Like I think girls definitely like someone who's polarizing, and people in general. I feel like you get a lot of benefit from like having a face that doesn't match who you are. It's like a wow factor. It's a shock.
That's true. Like you surprise people in like, sometimes it can maybe put them off because, if I'm being completely honest, dude, I think some girls have like dug me because let's just say like on a dating app, they think that I'm gonna be like an asshole, or they think I'm gonna be
Yeah.
this, like real dark triad and shit. And think when they meet me, you know what I'm saying? Like, I think when they meet me, they're like,
Yeah.
oh, he's just like a fairly like normal, like, like quirky dude. Some are genuinely put off because like they want what they thought that I was, or I don't live up to their expectations. I'm not like some psychopath from like a dark romance novel. So it's like they're like you're not meeting their expectations. I think they talk about that as well, where the more attractive you become, the higher the expectations others will have of you just based on your appearance alone. So the halo effect can also work against you in that regard. People are going to have higher expectations from you the better you look, because you look a certain type of way. They're like, oh, I thought you'd be smarter, or I thought you'd be like more low inhibition, or I thought you'd be more like, like more alpha, or like whatever it is. So there's that factor as well. The halo effect actually has like these weird, like inverse effects to it as well.
For sure. And then aside from girls, how has your treatment been? Have you gotten any extra benefits from looking better?
Just countless, bro. Like, just everyday interactions, like people smile at me, they hold doors open for me, like they just go out of their way to help me with things. I get free stuff all the time. If I go out, like it's not uncommon for like the bartender to like give me a free drink, girl or guy, whatever. People instantly just assume that I'm cool just because of how I look. No, they haven't even heard me speak, haven't even like heard the autistic shit that comes out of my mouth, and they just think that I'm cool just because of how I dress and how I look. But yeah, it's not just attraction from women, it's respect from men. Sometimes it's the opposite. Sometimes it's like it can actually be like hatred, or like
Yeah.
what's the
Jealousy.
word, like contempt. Yeah, like jealousy, like, contempt. But I'd rather that any day than just being indifferent or being invisible. Like, give me that any day of the week. But yeah, overall, way better improved quality of life. It's like people just, when you look better, it's almost like everyday people just like, they want you to win. They want you to succeed. They want you to get the promotion. They want you to like, whatever problem you have, you present them with, like they're actively like trying to like help you, versus, if I don't want to like be like a bit of a doomer here, but before I ascended, it was almost the opposite. It was almost like people just they couldn't care less, or maybe even in some situations they would like sabotage me like based on how I looked. So it's almost like people just want to see you win when you're attractive, because they're like, oh, this guy's he's attractive, he's striking, he's whatever. Instinctively they just want to help. They want you to get what you want, essentially.
I see. Do you have any like one-off experiences, or I'm sure you have a bunch, but is there anything that sticks out when it comes to something that has happened to you that has only happened because you got these surgeries or because you look better?
I wish I thought about this ahead of time, because there'd be so many examples that I could give you. But I think just, like I've received like, I remember being before I ascended, if it's more of a collective example, we'll just relate it to say work. But I remember before I ascended, it was like constant being like ridden by like difficult bosses, being performance managed. You're not doing this well enough. You're not doing that well enough. And then suddenly I ascend, and like lo and behold, I'm like funny. I'm a top performer. I cause no friction. Everyone likes me. And then I get 2 promotions. I go to a job interview. Like I almost never get rejected for a job when I go to an interview. So that would be just that alone. If we're just talking about just career success, that would be like, to me, one of the most noticeable and impactful differences that I've noticed. It's not a one-off, but it's just like a collective series of examples where I'm like, yeah, okay, halo effect's real.
For sure. Is there anything you regret with doing all of this, or do you have anything that you would have changed?
Obviously, I would have like altered probably the implants a little bit. We can't make shit perfect. I probably would have maybe gone for a slightly more conservative look. But again, I'm confident once I make some adjustments, once I completely eradicate like fluid and I increase fat, maybe make some eye adjustments, I think I'll be totally happy, completely content. Um, Obviously, another one is cost. Like, this is not cheap, but this is an expensive. It's gonna cost a lot of money. So yeah, another one would be like just overall like cost factor. It would be like recovery factor, and just the effect it can have on you just while you recover. And another thing as well, which I pointed out again, is just not doing enough research. I didn't need to get that rhinoplasty. I could have maybe potentially considered, I don't know if you could do this, but maybe I could have considered fat transfer at the same time of the implants being put in. So just things like that, just maybe not being like well researched enough. So are you talking about regrets? Is that, or things I
Yeah,
wish I knew? So I
but I
kind of
think you
get
covered
that.
that perfectly. You don't have to do this, but I think it'd go viral or semi-viral in a clip. What would you rate yourself before looksmaxing and now currently?
Literally invisible, it's over a tier. You look like Godus too. So I would say probably, no, I would probably say sub five if we're going before. And I would say right now in this interview too, I would say probably like high mid tier normie in his face. No, I'm serious. I'm deadly serious, bro. Like just in terms of just not having a totally natural look. But I would say when I'm peaked, when I've got more like facial fat, when things are just looking like as good as they can look, I would say like, easily high tier normie. Maybe if I were to get like jacked, I'd say maybe even high tier normie, I would say. I'm honestly pretty humble when it comes to that. People call me Chad
Definitely.
and stuff, and
You are
it's like,
Chad.
man, maybe to you, but it's like, yeah, no, I totally appreciate it. I think that it really depends on whether you're defining like, a PSL Chad versus a high appeal, I can just get anyone Chad. I think there's like, it's so subjective when it comes to that. But I would say right now, I'm like maybe high tier normie.
Got it. If you're a low high tier normie now, be completely honest with me. What is my rating? I want you to fry my shit.
Could just go ham or like talk about all your flaws and everything, or just give you a rating, or
Both. Can I get a rating? And what do you think I can improve on?
I would say, how tall are you?
I'm 5'5". I'm getting double limb lengthening too.
That's rough. Okay, so obviously your height is like frying you right now. Just your overall like lack of like dimorphism and just how soft you look is also frying. But do you show you just want me to be like brutal here? You're not
Oh
like that.
yes. Oh yes.
Because I'm pretty kind. Yeah, I would say even right now with everything, and we're just factoring in height and everything, you're still pretty much at like sub five to like low tier normie. Like you're definitely like you're down bad right now. I think once I think you've obviously made a lot of like really good improvements. You've got some good shit planned. But if we're just talking like the obvious, and I'm not one to talk to, but just overall framed clavicles, like just facial fat roundness, just lacking like just overall dimorphism, um, height obviously being probably one of the biggest things. So yeah, I would probably say in that region. I haven't seen you from really all angles or analyzed you too much, but I would say the most Margaret thing about you though, dude, is your mindset, the fact you're actually taking action and the fact that you're smart, you're clearly doing like the right things and you're not doing it in like a conservative way. You appreciate that where you're at currently is going to require like some serious like fucking adjustments, like to get you to a point where you're going to be, you know, in a different class.
For sure. What do you think about my surgery plan?
So if I'm being honest, I haven't really analyzed it too much, even though I would love to look at it more and give you my honest take because I think you probably get some value out of it. I wouldn't say I'm an expert when it comes to like jaw surgery and like osteotomy and movements and stuff, but I'll definitely have a good look and like tell you what I think. I think the fact that you're doing osteotomy plus implants is like absolutely essential.
For sure.
It looks like they're pretty liberal movements. And yeah, I think obviously, yeah, like your key is you really just want to increase your dimorphism, angularity, everything like that as much as possible, which it just based on what I've seen, it looks like you're covering. And I know Giant he's gonna be aiming and like pushing for that as well. So combine that with your limb lengthening, I think you're gonna be in a pretty good spot. And then obviously too, you're smart enough to recognize the fact that soft maxing and all those little adjustments we talked about can carry you like so far, even after all of those adjustments.
For sure, without a doubt. One thing I really respect about you is a lot of people will like speak on stuff they don't know about. And I really like the fact that you're like, all right, I'll look at your surgery plan. I'll give you some more advice when I've actually analyzed it, you know?
Yeah, I think I try to be honest, man. And that also means like if I'm not an expert in something or if I genuinely don't know, I'll just say like, man, I don't know. I'm actually unsure. I can't tell you like one way or the other, or I'm not an expert in this because I really think that I just think that it's a sign of maybe intelligence, but probably also just being honest, man. I'm just honest when it comes to that. I don't want to lie and just be the guy who like knows. Just because I descended, it doesn't mean I'm an expert in like every field. I've done a very bespoke thing to me. It doesn't mean I'm going to know exactly what's going to work for you. I can just use the information and knowledge and the anecdotal experience that I have and apply that to you as best I can.
I appreciate it. All right. Well, I think we're good to start closing this interview out. I do have one more question for you, but before I ask that, do you have any questions for me? Anything else you want to talk about?
No, I think you've covered a lot of like really important things. Just, I think you've covered a lot of things that people genuinely like want to know and like deserve to know if
Yeah,
they're going to undergo like such an extreme procedure or like series of procedures. Everything from like, like cosmetic to psychological to like social impacts. Like you've covered a lot of stuff. I'm not too great on the spot, but like I think I'll definitely have some things that I'd want to know about your procedure. I definitely want to know more about like as far as your implants, I'd like to sort of understand like if you like what your actual goal is as far as like what you want to achieve, why you want to achieve it. Did you model your implants and your osteotomy of anyone in particular? Did you say go to Jai and say this is like an ideal result for me? So I want to know more, like yeah, more about that as well.
sure. I can touch on it. So, as far as my consultation went, all I said was I want the best objective result I can get. And that's really all there was to it. I didn't give any like model photos or anything, no inspiration. I was just like, I want to objectively look better because I think that was going to benefit my life. And that's all I asked for. And that's the implant designs and the osteotomies he suggested and made were based off of that.
And I know that you did some morphs as well, which I saw, which like who did you do the morphs? Did someone else do the morphs?
I did
Cat morphs?
morphs.
Is that
The thing is, like, I know how different morphs are compared to actually getting the implants. The morphs, honestly, I've
they
been
usually look
using it.
uncanny?
Yes, and not just that, but
They,
go on.
I was gonna say they either look amazing, just too good to be true, or just absurdly uncanny because there's things that are hard to like factor in with morphs, like how
Like
light
lighting.
will hit your face. You can change like augmentation and shaping all day, but lighting and shading is something where people like tend to like really, it's like there's a massive like skill gap when it comes to morphing.
For sure. I look at the morph and I honestly don't even like see it as like a potential face I'd be getting just because of like the lighting changes and stuff. Because like let's say I'm morphing my jaw, it just looks weird with like the shadows and stuff. I honestly just mostly put it in there so people actually see like, okay, like this is something I'm getting. It's more for content, you know?
No, absolutely. And it's look, it gives you a rough idea anyway. You can at least sort of map out like, how my face look if it's longer or if my mid face is shorter or if, you see there's certain elements that you can get a really good understanding of. And obviously with the rhino, a side on morph makes complete sense.
Of course, yeah. Cool. Sounds good. Well, I do have one more question and then we'll end things off. Is that good with you?
Sure, Matt. Yeah, it's 3 inches and it points to the left. Go on, bro.
Uh, well, dude, based off of how you look, I am praying that you have a small hog, okay? Because you can't have it all, man.
It's inverted right now. So yeah, you're good. My offs are like,
Go.
yeah, they're cheering.
But seriously, across everything you've ever done, everything you've learned, what do you think is the most important thing that you have done to improve your life?
Are you talking about just every metric
Everything
like
that
that I
is
can learn?
looks. Yeah, what is the number one thing that has like improved your life the most?
Look, if we're being real, I'm not super rich. I'm also not like super famous or super well known. So I really don't have much money. I really don't have much status. But if we're just looking at like just how things have improved just based on looks alone, unequivocally looks. And I knew this the minute that I made even like relatively minor adjustments. So obviously like looks 100%. But I think I grossly underestimated just how much of an impact it would have on my life. One minute I'm just like this depressed guy with like no hope. The next minute I'm like doing interviews. My TikTok's like starting to blow up. I'm getting DMs from like, super like, high status and, influencers with like giant platforms. Suddenly I've gone from being invisible to just to like mattering. So Obviously, it's all looks, dude. Anyone who says otherwise is coping. If we look at those three metrics, looks wins any day of the week.
Noob, thank you for coming on. I really appreciate your time, and I appreciate you taking this interview.
And thanks, brother. Thanks for accommodating. Thanks for asking like some good questions. And obviously, I'll keep in touch, man. Like, I definitely want to see you ascend. Like I said, I think you're doing all the right things, and I definitely want to take like a closer look at your plan. And I definitely have some soft maxes and some other little tweaks that I'm going to suggest. For just because I can't help it, I love to help.
For sure. Sounds good.